I'm gonna. Good afternoon.
Hey, hi, how are you?
I'm doing great. Hey, everybody. This is Coach Lorri, and I am here today with Team Wilpers Run Coach and HYROX expert, Yusuf Jeffers. Where are you located today, Yusuf?
Currently in Miami, located in Miami.
So we're
Been
just about like this because I'm
as
over in Northern California.
far apart as you can get in the States. Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. So you
Um,
split your time, I think, between New York
Between New
and
York and Miami. Yes,
yeah.
exactly. And more than likely we'll be back full time in New York before the end of this year.
Well, that's awesome.
Yeah.
So, thank you for joining me today. We're going to chat a little bit about you and your background. This is an athlete briefing for our cycling program, but also, I think, very much of interest to our running program. So, we'll share it there as well. So, tell me, you're a new Team Wilpers coach. Tell me your
Yeah,
story.
yeah. Yeah, I've actually, I don't know if I'm the newest, but I actually been part of Team Wilpers for the last, I'd say, year and a half.
Well,
Um,
you're new to me.
yeah, year and a half, but I haven't been super heavily involved because just very busy. But I've had a few clients here and there. I've known Matt for a very long time. We have a history of having worked together in a few studios prior to his big come up in Peloton, in the Peloton world. So always kept in touch. And once he created this was just another way to connect with him and spread the good word.
That's awesome. So, you were a high school athlete.
I was a track and basketball star. I also did so in college as well too.
Yeah,
I wouldn't say star. That just came out. I don't know where that came
I
from,
loved
but
it.
I participated. There's probably a better way of describing it. So I actually started off as a track athlete in high school, and that transitioned into going into college and walking on the team and working on. I was a sprinter, a short distance athlete. That was my natural interest in track. I had no real interest in anything further than a 400-meter run. And eventually just kind of blossomed into a little bit more. So real early that my strengths weren't necessarily in the short distance sprints. And so developed into a little bit of a longer distance runner after college. And I've worked in the strength and conditioning portion of the field of fitness for a long time. That actually is really my introduction to fitness, to be honest with you. Um, Understanding the work that you would have to do to help you with performance was always something that was really attractive to me. So my introduction to being in a gym and working out and doing those types of things was always about the effect that it could have on your
At the
performance
sport.
at the
Yeah.
sport. Exactly,
So
right.
let me ask you a question about sprinting because our next cycling challenge is a sprint challenge, and it's not necessarily a sprint challenge, but it's designed to test short duration power. So when we look in cycling and we can test our FTP or our critical power, we would call it in running. But we can also test short duration power and train the high intensity aspects of our sport. And we do that for endurance training. Now, in sprint training, do you not need a big base to an
Um,
Olympic base in order to be a sprinter?
You probably, I mean, it all depends on the distance, right? It's gonna vary a little bit, but to be honest with you, yeah, you're training to adapt to a very specific type thing. So you're not gonna see sprinters going out running miles or running,
Right.
long aerobic endurance type training because it doesn't really translate very well to what it is that they're specifically training for, especially at
Got
the higher level that you become. Now, if you're talking about someone who is more of like, say, a heptathlete, and they're participating in varying lengths and different disciplines, then yeah, it becomes a little bit more important to have a bigger aerobic base, because you're obviously doing a little bit more work. And
Mhm.
so yeah,
I have,
but for sprints, you probably won't see a lot of that at all.
yeah, I have friends who race in track cycling, and most of those events are very short. It might be a 9-second event or a 19-second event, or even some of the longer events are well under an hour. Um, and ask them to go out and climb a hill, and they're like, "Oh no!" But they have the biggest quads ever, right? So it's a power sport. It's really about strength versus our endurance riders tend to be built very differently. A climber is going to be a small individual versus a sprinter is going to have these huge thighs. So,
Exactly.
Now let me ask you one more question about sprinting, because a lot of people are like, why would you train sprinting if you're an endurance athlete, or why would you train short duration efforts? So as an endurance athlete, you still, I'm assuming, do some high intensity work.
Yeah, actually, I mean, it's still very attractive to me, and there's a few reasons I would think that it's useful. I mean, first of all, sprinting is all about power output, right? So just like you mentioned, is strength, and power is defined as work over time. So the stronger you are, and the more you can express that strength in a short duration of time, the higher your power output. And so I don't know what race, it doesn't matter the distance, there's always going to be moments and periods of times where you have to express power, right? So you have to
Maybe
express.
it's just the finishing sprint.
It could be, yeah, it could be the very end, it could be a moment in the middle, it could be at the beginning. You do have to be able to express power. So practicing it, and it's the type of thing that does not develop without being practiced, right?
Right.
You have to actually do it in order to express it, because you're now not only strong, you have to practice the nerve impulse. You have to practice
Mhm.
the ability to fire those muscles quickly, and that's not just an innate skill that everyone has, right? So it's
And
something.
on the bike, you have to practice specific technique because you use the bike differently when you're sprinting. And
Exactly.
a lot of people think, oh, well, on Zwift, I can do, or on Peloton, I can do a sprint effort. And it's like, you know what? It's different outside. And a good sprinter is going to go out every week and practice their sprint.
Right,
So,
and that also reminds me that, and speaking of technique, like the other important part of it is that it then helps with your efficiency, right? So when we practice working on speed, generally speaking, most folks actually get better with form, specifically when it comes to running, right? They
mhm.
get a little bit better with their form when they're running faster. So as they practice that, they can then become a little bit more efficient running at slower speeds. It takes less energy and effort to maintain that speed for a lot longer, right? So it
I've
all
always found
cleans
it
things up with that.
hard to run slowly. And as a lot of people do, right? And my running coach, I was using power-based training. So I was using a stride pod, and it would talk to me when I went too hard. It would play this little trumpet sound, da, 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 da. And if I went too slowly, it would give me like the sad trombone. And I kept saying, but my form is no good when I run slowly. And as he had me training at the track and improving my high speed technique, it actually helped me with my low speed technique as well, which surprised me because I was like, oh, this will never be better. But
Yeah,
it did, because I learned how to fire my muscles differently. So,
right,
yeah,
correct.
so that was good.
Yeah, this is exactly what we talk about when we speak about running efficiency, right?
Yeah.
That's exactly that's what it helps with. So there's tons of reasons to actually do this for whatever sport it is, whatever distance it is that you're training for. There's always some utility to it.
Yeah. I also, when I design the year, I like to look at how can we change our training, because we adapt to whatever we do often. So when I do something, I become really good at that one thing. And when I switch it up, I challenge my body to change, just like we change our strength program every 6 weeks or every 8 weeks or whatever. Speaking of strength, I will say I went back to the gym to strength train this past year. And what did I notice? All my short duration power. It was really easy to make hard power. So that was great.
Yeah.
That was not why I did it. I did it so as an old lady, I can open jars and reach things on the shelf. But yeah, so that was a great benefit for me there too, was just the
Yeah,
fact that everything got better with strength training. And that's always
absolutely.
been kind of controversial. When you were running, so you and I are close to the same age. When I started bike racing, there was a very prevalent feeling that you shouldn't strength train during your competitive season because
Yeah.
it would fatigue you. And now
Yes.
we're saying, hey, even if you're just doing maintenance, especially as a master's athlete, it's super important. What was
Yeah.
your experience with that?
Yeah, no, very similar. That was sort of the ideology that, you run and you run to get better at running. And it's a little bit counterintuitive to
Mhm.
think, but I think that with the science and with the experience, you start realizing that for the longevity's sake as well, and the ability to handle the amount of work over time, that strength training became crucial. And I don't know any runner who hasn't experienced some form of injury or some setback, or some athlete that had. And what do you do when you experience that? You go back to very basic strength training exercises to help you with whatever imbalance it is that you have. So being smart about it proactively,
Right.
and being strong proactively is going to maybe also extend your career, prevent you from having injuries, build up your work base. There's just so many benefits to it. And yet, I think now people are starting to um, realize now that that's a much better approach to their training,
Yeah.
and their form, and the results bear it out as well too, right? You actually get better.
Matt has often commented on social media about he goes weekly to a physical therapist. And a lot of us think of physical therapy as fixing us once we're broken, but it also can be very prehab, basically, right? So I can be preventive, and physical therapy is really, most of it is resistance training, when you think about it, right? And mobility training. Yes, they may use a stim or an ultrasound or something, but it's really teaching you how to fire your muscles correctly and move through ranges of motion correctly. And super important. So that prehab and the strength, and of course rehab once we do get injured, because runners are always injured. I think
Right,
the
exactly.
difference between runners and cyclists, runners get injured all the time and then they become cyclists. And when I see cyclists, they're often smiling and waving when they ride bikes. And when I see runners, they never smile.
Yeah.
I did because I loved running. So
Yeah.
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 Um,
No, very
so
true. Very true.
so tell me, so you went from being an athlete and in traditional high school sports, and then you transitioned into coaching and training, and now you're doing more endurance oriented sports and some power
Yeah.
sports as well. So how did that happen?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, to be honest with you, it's sort of natural. I've always had an interest in not your traditional endurance sports, right? So I started after being an athlete, and actually, there's a big gap in there that I didn't mention, where I wasn't doing anything at all in the fitness field. I spent a good 10, 15 years working as a research scientist in gene therapy work and such. So not doing anything at all fitness related. But that was always calling to me, right? So once I recognized that, I still needed to have that kind of interaction, and that fitness was so um, prescriptive in terms of being able to improve your quality of life.
Right.
And that was something that I felt like I needed to have that involved in what I was doing. That's when I went back into training and personal training, and just sports and sports conditioning was always the most attractive part of things to me. How that applied to endurance athletes, how it applied to your traditional sports, how it applied to, short distance sprinters and such, that was always my interest. So I kept that as part of my base at all times. and then, you know, was around a lot of runners and around people who were, you know, I began to work with runners a little bit, and realizing that, again, I would see all of these injuries, all of these, you know, all of these things that just they scream to me like, hey, if you just spent a little bit of time on getting stronger or addressing imbalances, addressing you know, issues or where your weaknesses are through resistance training, not just through doing a couple of exercises that could get you back to functionality, but rather get you stronger, and so you could hyper adapt,
Mhm.
then you would see improvement in your performances. And so that was all, has always been sort of my background and my basis in terms of where it is that I like to push with training for endurance athletes. So I worked with as a head coach for high school track and field for about 6 years. And
Right.
during that time, you know, the school went from not being very well respected to, you know, being able to get to a state championships regularly every season. You know, there are still records that are on the books there from my time there. And I'm not saying that to really you know, toot my own horn, but I'm saying it because our approach was different from what was done traditionally.
Yeah.
And
It's
they,
interesting though, because I was
yeah,
thinking as you were chatting, there are a lot of people. I also had a previous career. For 14 years, I worked in theater. And then I had a few years in corporate America in high tech. And there are a lot of people in the Peloton community who are like, wow, how do you get to do the kind of things you do? How do you make that transition to turning your passion into a career, which has its positives and negatives, I will say, right?
yes,
Um,
yeah,
but honing your skills in a high school program is a great way to do it because you can experiment a lot. And granted, you have to approach students sometimes differently than a mature athlete. But on the cycling side, there are a lot of folks I know who got their start with the National Interscholastic Cycling Association, which is the national mountain bike program that was founded here in the Bay Area. And they have developed a curriculum for coaches. And they have, I mean, it's just an amazing program. And I know a lot of people who have then transferred that into an actual paying job as a coach, which is great.
yeah, yeah,
So
absolutely, yeah.
most of us aren't going to get rich, but but at least we get to do
No,
something that we're passionate about. We're not rotting at a desk, which
yes,
you know, yeah,
certainly, yeah, absolutely. No, absolutely. That was, it was not the easiest of transitions.
right.
You know, you're from what I was doing previously to coaching and working in fitness, but you're correct. It was something that I realized ultimately was I was passionate about helping people, and this was just another a more effective and immediate way of affecting their lives and improving their lives
Right.
through fitness. Yeah.
Now you've coached groups, and you also train and coach individuals, right, in
That
person
is
and
correct.
virtually.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So through one of the studios in Manhattan, an indoor treadmill studio. You may not have heard of it, or may have heard of it. It's not Peloton, but it's called Mile High Run Club.
Yeah.
I worked with them and their marathon training group for a number of years. Started off with their half marathon group, and I specialized really with actually working with their athletes on their strength days as well as their track days. So like their, you know, their short, their speed days on the track. And once we, you know, formally incorporated that as part of their training programs, I mean, I think we saw something like a 70 to almost 75% PR rate with
Wow.
all the athletes who were doing the program, at least, you know, the folks who followed it
Mhm.
correctly.
So you're the power guy. If you want power, go to
Somewhat, yeah, exactly, somewhat, exactly.
yeah.
If you're interested in getting a little bit stronger, if you're interested in, you know, you've reached a bit of a plateau, or you recognize the need for some strength and power in there in your output, then yeah, I'm probably a good person to talk to about it.
Yeah. And then what do you do with Team Wilpers?
So with Team Wilpers, I'm a run coach. So anyone who is interested in training for, it really doesn't matter what distance they're training for. I've worked with mainly marathoners and half marathoners
Yeah.
there. So I can create programs for them and coach them through their training for that. But then also people who are looking to incorporate strength programs into their training, or maybe they're a little unsure of what it is that they should be doing, or they're a little not as confident as they should be going into a gym and
Right.
knowing what they should be doing, or I can help folks with that. So that's mainly my experience with Team Wilpers, and it's and again across the board, it's pretty amazing to see that with just a little bit of consistent work, everyone seems to find a way forward
Oh,
and
yeah.
improving. Yeah.
Consistency is everything. I always tell people that, when I'm trying to improve my fitness, I've got this pyramid of consistency. That's the bottom line.
Yeah.
Consistency, show up, do the work, and then the rhythm, right? How do I do it? What do I do on Monday or Tuesday or Wednesday? When do I do
Right.
my intervals, my long run or long ride? And then progression, meaning having some kind of plan that makes sense from a physiological point of view.
Right.
Yeah. So you compete as well, though.
Well, I mean,
This is
I'm
why I
much more
really love
amateur with my competitions now these days. So I also work in another field of fitness that is fast growing, called fitness racing. I work for a company called HYROX that many people may or may not have heard of. It's a global fitness race. And so I work as a race director there. And for most of North America, I'm one of the people who is out there setting up the courses, making sure that they're measured correctly, that the flow makes sense, that athletes go through this, and so this is part of that. And I hate to say it, because it's just that it's recognized as this, but it's called hybrid fitness or hybrid racing, which basically involves
that's where the names comes from. Hybrid racing. It's high
yeah,
rock.
yeah. I mean, yeah,
I
HYROX.
wonder.
Actually, the name itself, which is a misconception, a lot of people have some really far out misconceptions about where the name comes from. The name doesn't stand for anything. It just
Oh,
That's the name. It's not short for anything. It doesn't
it's like
mean anything
IKEA.
else.
They just make
It's
up
just
names
yeah,
for
it's just a
sofas
made
and
up name,
cabinets,
right?
and yeah.
Yes.
Thank you,
But
IKEA.
because it's there's hybrid fitness, and hybrid racing is such a popular term right now, people think that that's um connected, but it's not
Right.
at all.
So honestly, this is my true confession. One of the things that I found so interesting about you was high rocks. And I have been, as an endurance athlete, I've gone to CrossFit often, but I never found it to be a good fit for me for many reasons. Probably because as an endurance athlete, you're using it just to supplement your endurance training. And CrossFit is in and of itself its own sport. And I
Yes.
think people who go through the progression, the annual progression, and are there training 6 days a week are great. And then I always felt like I wanted to compete with everyone because I compete. That's what I do. And I couldn't
Yeah.
because that's not my sport. Right. And then I
Right.
would get injured.
Yeah.
And so I saw High Rocks because Matt was registered. And I think the first time I heard about it was when Lance Armstrong um,
Mm.
was going to compete in New York. And that was
Mm.
a couple of years ago. And I was like, oh, what is this thing? And I thought, well, here is something like CrossFit and the CrossFit games that I could do because it's fitness based more. And there's some strength components,
Right.
but I was like, I can do this. Well, maybe not burpees, but I can do everything else. so,
Yes.
so tell me more about that. So tell us
Yeah.
about
So, I
because I think
mean,
this is a perfect Peloton people kind of
uh,
activity.
you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right about that. And actually, HYROX has been around since 2016. It's been around
Yeah.
a long time. Yeah. I think just a lot of people hadn't heard about it, but within the last year, especially here in the States, its profile has gotten a lot bigger, you know, mainly due to people like Lance Armstrong taking it on as a challenge and such.
Mhm.
And I think the attractiveness of it is that it is the type of race that meets you wherever you are in your current fitness journey, right? You don't necessarily have to be at a elite level to be able to go to these races. You don't have to, you know, have you know, immaculate technique in order to know how to do some of the movements. So that's, I think, is barrier to entry is relatively low for
Mhm.
many people, but yet it also provides the opportunity for challenge for
Yeah,
many people who want to compete as well. You
because most of us don't do all of those
know?
things.
Right,
As an
exactly,
endurance athlete
exactly.
or a fitness athlete, I I might run, but I probably don't also row and do ski erg and push a sled and
Right.
all those things. And it's like, okay, there's just enough new and challenging stuff to make it more exciting than just going to do a 10K or a 5K or in this
Yeah.
case 8K. Um,
8K.
yeah. So it was interesting to me for that respect. And also the fact that you can do it as a solo competition, right? I can compete or I can complete, yes.
Right,
And
exactly.
I can do it as a solo, but I could do it as a two-person team, right? Or as
You
a
can, or even as a relay,
four-person team.
right? Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. You can do it. And this again is what I mean when I say it meets you wherever you are, right? So you can find someone out there and find a partner who can complement you, if maybe someone who's good at running and you're good at strength, or vice versa. Or you're not good at either of them, and somebody who can who can help you just carry the load, right?
Yeah.
Those are many of the reasons why it's so attractive to so many people. And again, the founder and the person who invented it, her name is Mintra Tilly. She also picked exercises that were you know, functional, and for lack of a better word or term, functional in nature, that everyone who is generally fit should be able to do,
Mhm.
right? You know, it's a push, a pull, a squat, a hinge, a run, right? A throw, right?
Kind of like the
Jump.
president's fitness, whatever that was, the president's
Something,
council
yeah.
on
I mean,
fitness when you were a kid.
this was started in Germany, but
Yeah.
yeah. But similar, you know, similar concept and thoughts. A lot of it is, you know, it works in the same modality and planes that all of us operate in terms of front horizontal plane, you know, frontal plane work, sagittal plane work, you know, running, moving forward.
Mhm.
There's not a lot of transverse plane stuff, but it's still challenging enough that you have to focus on all aspects of
Right.
your fitness, right? Yeah. So if you are out there and you aren't big on your endurance, you're gonna have to improve it if you want
Right.
to do well at it. And if you, and again, if you know, it's just it's also the type of environment where if you're just there to have fun and complete it and experience it, it's a great experience. You're there
Yeah.
with tons of hundreds of other people, high energy, MC, music, stands, crowds, so many other things that are happening outside of the actual race itself.
Mhm.
That it's always just a fun experience and a fun time
Yeah.
to be there.
Well, so will I get to see you in Anaheim? Because I've been stalking the site.
Absolutely.
Registration is not open yet, but I decided that since I'm not racing bikes this year, I'm going to make this my big goal. And it's like the 14th or 15th of December. So I have plenty of time to learn how to do a burpee or push a
Or
sled.
a
And
modified version of one. Yes,
I
yeah,
know with my
absolutely.
janky hips.
Yes.
But the cool thing is, I convinced my strength coach to do it with me. So I think we'll do a two-person and be there to support each other. She's been a CrossFit athlete for a long time, so this is not in her wheelhouse. She's done some running, but
Yeah.
so it's like, okay, I challenge you and you challenge me, and we're going to do this together, and it'll be super fun. So,
Yeah.
um, and then she's going to help train me. it's because I was like, could you check my rowing technique? Because I want to start rowing. And we worked on that. And yeah, so
Yeah.
awesome.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Something, and look at this, again, something that you probably otherwise would not have picked up on your own had you not considered doing this race, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, there are lots of people who will get on a rower at a gym and have no idea about technique or how to be
Oh,
efficient
yeah.
with moving it, but due to the fact that you're now thinking about competing and being better at it, you're now
Mhm.
focusing on those aspects of your fitness. And that's really where this was born. Our founders were people who just went out and realized that folks were not doing training for anything specific other than
Right.
going to the gym, right? They went out and
Permafit, we
yeah, they
called it.
went out, and the vast majority of people out there, their sport was just going to the gym, right?
Yes.
So this just gave many of those people something to focus that energy towards, right? So
Right.
now,
A target.
yes, exactly,
That's
right?
a hard thing.
Exactly.
And I'll say,
Yeah.
as a coach, when I have a client and we have our initial meetings, and I'm like, so what are your goals? And usually they're races or events. And they're like, oh, I just want to be faster with my group rides. And I'm like, oh, God, this can be hard because we don't have a timeline. We don't
Right.
have an event. And it's like, I'll have to make something up. I'm like, okay, well, maybe we'll pick this hill climb and we'll work on that for the next 4 weeks.
Yes.
And, but yeah, events giving you a target, giving you a timeline, a date, I think really helps with our focus as a lot
Without a
of
doubt.
folks now.
Without
Yeah.
a doubt. Yeah, and
So
then that then gives you a framework as to how to plan and program for that person, and coming
mhm,
up with a training plan that makes sense for them, and then can keep them on online and on target,
yeah,
for lack
yeah.
of a better word.
And
Um,
it's fun to do new things. As a cyclist, I started running about 5 years ago, and it was like, wow. I was kind of struggling with being in my early 50s and menopause, and everything was changing, and I was frustrated with my sport. And so I was like, I'll run. That'll be different. And I can have, and you always PR when you just started something. So it was like, wow. And running has age group racing, which is great. So I was able to, stand on some podiums, even though I was in my 50s. And
yeah.
yeah, it was awesome. So I'm excited about a new challenge.
Yeah, my approach is just the longer I stay fit enough to compete, the higher on the rankings I can get. So it might take me another like 50 something years to get on a podium or something, but I'm gonna just do my best to keep pushing until I
I
get
used to think that about bike racing and masters racing, that I was going to just outlive everybody or keep competing.
there.
And I remember being very young and thinking, oh, at 45 I'll win nationals because nobody will be racing anymore. And what I realized is the women who are still racing that are my age, I'm going to be 60 next month. um, they've been really good racers for a long time. They're the only ones that stuck with it all these
Yeah,
years. And I'm
yeah.
like, oh, maybe that'll have to be when I'm 80. I
Yeah.
but
All
yeah,
right, but
I
you're
want
in the race no matter what. You're in the
right.
race. So
Yeah.
yeah.
And I think as coaches, that's important too, because we understand we may not have exactly the same experience as our athletes, but we understand what that experience is. And we've had similar experiences of our own. And
Yeah.
keeping current, I think, on the type of events, like in cycling, there's been a huge shift away from road racing into gravel racing. It is a different sport. It's a very different sport. And having that experience makes me a better coach. I know how to program. I know how to, encourage people to work on their skills as well as their fitness. And, what nutrition is like when you're bouncing around on a dirt,
Without a
trail
doubt.
or road. And yeah, so that kind of thing.
Without a doubt. Yeah. You can't really speak authentically to what it takes to do well at it without having experienced it. And so,
Yeah.
even for me, it's still important that I'm out on a course and I understand what it's like for the athletes, even though there's, thousands. We'll have events where there's tens of thousands of people who have gone through the course. But,
Yeah.
if I at least can get out there, I know what it feels like at certain points. I can, you know, inform other people about where to pay attention, to how they expend their energy. And it's really, and that's always what racing is about. It's management of your energy systems, right?
Right.
It's management of how it is that you work, and going in with a game plan, going in and understanding where your strengths are. And, and every race is a little different. Every race is always something new. So you got to have a plan A, B, and C for whatever contingencies and for whatever comes up in front of you. So, yeah, without
And the mental aspect and
yeah,
the strategy aspect. It's especially in bike racing, you can sit on a trainer and your functional threshold power might be X. And maybe the guy next to you is, his power to weight ratio is higher than yours. And so technically he might be fitter than you. But the reality is maybe that person doesn't race very smart, or their nutrition isn't very good, or they haven't previewed the course, or they inflated their tires too much, any of those things.
yeah,
So
it's
having that
actually, it's
understanding.
amazing. Yeah,
Yeah.
amazing how much that pre-race preparation can affect and you'd also be surprised with, not everyone has the luxury of having a coach or having somebody
Right.
to look out for them. And unfortunately, many people do go into races without much of a game plan, or without having paid attention to, basic things like rules, or,
Mhm.
and what they should be doing. So
Right.
I think, yeah, there's always going to be um, some value in what people like you and I provide.
Mhm. Do you think an event like HYROX would ever be an Olympic event?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that that's the goal. That is
Yeah. So
the
like the
trajectory that
pentathlon
is,
or the
yeah, that's the
heptathlon.
trajectory that it's on right now. It's
That's cool.
attracted lots of so while 90 something percent of the people who go through it are experiential in nature, there's lots of aspirational people. There's now a growing community of elite athletes, and we've actually been around long enough that you start seeing now a changing of the guard in terms of who
Mhm.
was originally the elites. In the I guess we've been around for 10 years or so.
Yeah.
Um, so, and in that time, it's improved tremendously in terms of, the, the programming and the training for it as a sport, right? And
Mhm.
people recognizing that you can come into it with certain strengths, you can come into it with having been a good athlete and something else, but without specifically training for this actual event, you're not going to compete with the top people in that
Right.
sport.
Specificity.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
So no matter what, I think that lends itself to it becoming defined as its own thing and
That's so
becoming its
cool.
own sport, right? Exactly. And so I think that's, and it will get there. It will get to that place where it is considered its own sport,
Yeah.
which is really exciting to be around and really exciting to see that happen.
Yeah. Um, okay. In closing on HYROX, if someone or someone else in the Peloton community was interested, what would your first piece of advice be, or your overall umbrella piece of advice?
I think that for most people, recognizing the nature of the actual sport itself is lends itself much more towards endurance and being an endurance sport.
Mhm.
And you have to take a good assessment of where you are in terms of your fitness, right? Paying attention to, can I run an 8K? Can I run a 10K? And how well can I do that? Um, if that's a good, you're in a good starting place with that, then now let's focus on your strength. Let's focus
Yeah.
on, yeah, understanding the actual stations within that race. If you're somebody who a strength athlete who mainly does like powerlifting, and you're only okay with, like, you hate the idea of getting up and running more than more than like
200 meters
500
around
meters.
the
Yeah,
box.
exactly. right? Then you know, hey, this is the thing that I have to work on. I'm going to be
Mhm.
coming in there pretty strong, but my endurance is something that I have to work on. So I think an honest assessment of where your particular strengths lie, and then learning how to adjust and adjust your training for that. And
Yeah.
then there's people who are there's I find it's generally not many people who are middle of the road. Most folks like either one thing or the other. But the people who are towards the middle of that spectrum, it's just really just understanding how can I train to increase my capacity? How can
Mhm.
I train to do specifically what is required in this event, because it's probably something that I don't do at all. How often
Right.
do you get up and go run 1,000 meters and then come and go push a sled, or leave doing burpee broad jumps into running for 1,000 meters? It's not something that most people are doing in their
Right.
training, right? So it's understanding how to specifically train for this event, and improve on where you're at, currently.
Yeah. So train your weaknesses, but also train your strengths. You might make up
Absolutely.
some time there if you improve your strength, and then be
Absolutely.
strategic about your pacing in the event, I would assume, because if I
Without a
throw
doubt. Without a
myself
doubt.
in a
Yeah,
1K
without a
and then
doubt.
I try to do burpees, I'm going to fall over and die, probably.
Yes. I
Right.
mean,
Yeah.
I think this race is also it's also a great lesson in understanding um how to pick your spots, how to pick where it is that you make moves or pushing and running your race. The average time for someone to complete, a single person to complete a HYROX race, is an hour and a half, 90
Yeah.
minutes, right? That's not typical for most people's workouts, right?
Except
So
people who ride with Matt Wilpers, right?
exactly.
He's got his 90-minute rides and his
Yeah,
2 hour
exactly, right? But
interval rides, but that's
during
still,
that 90 minutes, you got to get off the bike and you got to
yeah.
do air squats, or you got to do a bunch of lunges, right? So now you're starting to think about, how am I able to express strength while having that kind of endurance? So
Yeah.
it's not typical in terms of how people are actually training out there. So I think and that's why it's becoming its own thing now.
Yeah.
Um, so I think that's one of the things that I think the Peloton community is actually at a good advantage, because they have basically everything that you need
Yeah.
and access to in terms of being able to train for this. You
Right.
have your endurance part, you have your treadmill classes, but then you also have your strength work, right? You also
Yeah.
have the core works, you have the stretching, and I mean so many different aspects of a complete comprehensive training program is
Yeah.
there, right there on
But you
that
got to get
platform.
somebody to put it all together. Or at least that's,
Exactly.
I'm a coach, so I always have a coach. And there are a lot of coaches who don't. But I do believe having someone with some expertise to keep you from getting injured, to keep you from getting demotivated and getting stagnant,
Mhm.
and help you focus, because we're also not very unbiased. I could tell you my strength is X and it's really Y, and someone else could see that easily, and I couldn't.
Yeah,
So yeah, I
yeah.
think having some guidance in this. So
No, without a
um,
doubt.
maybe we'll put together a Team Wilpers group to go to Anaheim. That would be
I
fun.
would love that. I would love to see that. I would love to
We'll have to
see,
talk to Matt.
more Team Wilpers people involved. And again, I'm here for anybody who's interested in this sport, and here to help them achieve their goals where that's concerned.
Yeah, that's good. So if someone wants to reach out to you as a coach, they can find you on the Team Wilpers website.
Absolutely, yeah.
Where do they find information about High Rocks?
You can always go to the HYROX website, hyrox.com. It's very simple. It tells you basically everything about what the race is, upcoming schedules. It's a global race, so you're going to see not only races here in North America, but literally all over the world in different markets. All over Europe, all over Asia, Asia Pacific, South America, Africa. It's really exploding globally.
You could
So
plan your vacation around, event
literally.
races,
Literally,
vacation
it's a it's
races.
a
Yeah.
it's a great opportunity to travel and keep fitness at the forefront of your experience in a new space, in a new
Hey,
place.
honey, let's go to Paris so we can
Yeah.
HYROX, right?
Right? Instead of
Yeah,
spending your time just simply drinking wine, eating cheese and baguettes,
buying Louis
can also
Vuitton bags
you
or
can
whatever.
race and do all of that as well too, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I love to travel when I'm doing physical activities. So, anyways, that sounds very exciting. Thank you for sharing all of that. Couple of quick pieces of business, everybody. We've got the Summer Sprint Challenge, which is coming up, which is one reason why I thought Yusuf would be great here, because we're doing sprint work. It begins July 14th. Registration is open now. We're going to focus on short duration power. And it starts and finishes with Matt's Power Profile class, which you can use as a benchmark and then as a test. And I would say, if you want to get the most out of this program, take the 2-week break and take your FTP test. There is a 1-week FTP execution training program in the All Access membership, so you can follow that or create your own. And then that's about it. So everything's still on the Team Wilpers platform. We'll have PDFs and the free 3-ride challenge and all those things. We will incorporate strength and other non-bike activities in this one for all access. And I think that's about it. So all access, the cost of a latte, $9.95 a month. Always feel like car salesman when I say that. But anyways, it's definitely worth $9 a month to have access to any of the running programs, cycling programs, strength programs. So that's it. Join your chat groups, find the Facebook group, use our hashtag Team Wilpers Cycling, train with your buddies, and we'll see you on the leaderboard. So thank you so much for joining me today.
I
This was
appreciate you, Lorri.
awesome.
Thank you so much for
Yeah.
having me.
Yes. Have a great day.
All right, you too. Take care.